I know I am respected when people treat me like I am important. Got it over to the right here. Makes things a little easier. And I got to elevate my computer a little bit on the back so it gets some good airflow. It's already starting to use the fan. So the computer is slightly elevated. I know I am respected. People treat me like I am important. I am important. People pay attention to me. People listen to me and look me in the eye. You can't do that as a man. You're not allowed. Don't interrupt me when I am talking. In a male female relationship, regardless of the relationship, the way that we are taught in this country is atrocious. Men are expected to give actual efforts in the area of usefulness. Like, oftentimes when a male is stalked, a woman will go to other males to have them stalk their prey. A male stalker tends to do it alone. A female stalker tends to have other people do it for her, go along with her, and basically get actively involved. Like Sandy Fromm tried to do when she was stalking Toby Smith. So, with traditional gender roles, a lot of women, as women who became, I guess, transgender people that went from being women to being men. Now, of course, we're supposed to try to remember all the different acronyms in every group's acronym. And what the hell is that? Some little thing popped up on my screen and did a redirecting thing. Radeon settings. Okay, it didn't say redirecting, it said Radeon settings. Alright, it stopped. Alright, it says people don't interrupt me when I'm talking. In a lot of the environments that are primarily male, there really isn't a whole lot of talking. It's generally all business. This is a portion of the world that most women never get to see, or that quickly washes away when many women enter the room because it becomes an all eyes on me event. The boss's wife is showing up, the homeowner and his wife are showing up, or the rich lady who financed this ordeal is showing up. And in those occasions, you are expected to wives cook for all of us. Mary Jetson is one of those. And I was always glad for that. Yes, she was always snarky at me. Always. Always. But if I worked, I was fed. Always. No matter how snarky she was. There was a burger or some meatloaf or some tacos. She's a good cook. A really good cook. For us men, we're expected to bottle it up. The more stressed I am, the more scared I am, the more I just can't shut up. It's because I am desperate to be heard and desperate to try to get people to understand assumptions for us versus our actual intentions are not hardly ever the same. Once in a while you're right. Once in a great while you were right. The problem is that if you think of a man as anything other than a woman with a different education, you're definitely wrong. Testosterone does not have as much of a drive over us as you might believe. It's that options are limited, our expectations are limited. Because our expectations are not based on our abilities or your abilities or what's right and wrong. It's based on societal expectations. And societally, women tend to, and this is obviously not correct. We've been down the different stations around here, and there's some of them racist old guys, and every one of them being racist, being anti-homeless, anti-women. Where do you think a lot of the fuel comes from when I talk trash back to them? Directly from them, I just changed words a little. I do that with every hate group, and any group that's fighting only for its own equality is not fighting for equality by definition. Because who are you comparing yourself to? Who are you trying to be equal to? Are you trying to be equal to a homeless male? Obviously not. Obviously not. That is a fearful thing for you. And many of you even fearing being in that position. Like them young men yesterday. They don't fear that. They just mean. And just be mean. When it gets into a shouting match where it's people each other, that's how it is. It's people yelling at each other, no matter what gender. When it's people cursing, it's people cursing. A lot of y'all assign hatred and blame and all that specifically to men, and we've gotten to hear from many of the women in this town about violence that they would beget upon others. Violence that they're willing to beget upon others. Violence that they try to entice others to commit violence against others for them. And we've gotten to hear women admit to that or talk about how they would shoot somebody or things of that nature. That's where a lot of women's response is. A man's response is supposed to be the emergency response, and then a woman's role societally is to be the therapist afterwards kind of thing. But are you the therapist afterwards only in words, or are you actually following through? People go, I have a really good mother, and her advice always seems to come through, So as a therapist, that's who I'm going to be. What they don't realize is that their mother was also a hard worker who worked behind the scenes for your benefit and also taught you things and assisted you in ways that you didn't pay attention to or did not assign the true significance of it. Like when your mom paid your insurance because she was proud of you for getting your first job and being able to use the vehicle. And she's paying part of your vehicle off for you and paying the insurance every month because she's proud of you. What you don't consider is that it's not just her positive words and encouragement vocally, it's also her positivity in real life in showing that positivity by making those efforts. And because of this, we've taught a lot of women that, to say you did it yourself. Modern feminism is supposed to say you did it yourself. You're not allowed to admit that you got help from men. You don't need a man. You never needed a man. And I've heard that out of a lot of women who got themselves into an abusive relationship with the same guy, often more than once. And the only people who ever showed up to actually help them in most of those occasions were men, including the man who beat them up or something similar, according to her. I have to say according to her because it is so prevalent. We've got women who are bragging openly about committing felonies against men. We've got women that I have saved screenshots of where they wanted to accuse their ex of being into little boys, wearing girls' clothing, and then 2 weeks later, she's crying and whining. Instead of it's the I don't need a man thing anymore, it's I need him back, I want him back. Like, just telling people that he's into little boys and he wears girls' panties. I mean, so What incentive does he have to come back to you? Now, this lady is one of those ultra positive woke people, right? So she's all about women's rights and LGBT rights and no body shaming. And here she is trying to accuse this man of being a homosexual and wearing girls' clothing, of being something that he's not, even though she's for those people. Well, she's really not. In reality, when she thinks that saying that to other people will destroy a man's reputation and his name and his credibility, then that's what she'll do. But it depends on which woman. Societally, men don't really share their feelings. If they do, they're told they're being selfish. If a woman goes to her friend, he tells her friend that she is suicidal, she's more likely to get a positive ear and also more likely to get help from these services. She's more likely to be heard as a female and more likely to have someone to help. But also, we've got a lot of women who slander a man's name and then play victim after slandering his name because you have to gaslight him. You have to try to convince people not to listen to him before you try to do something. So tries to get help. You're stuck in that transitional role where you're taught that you're supposed to say something, but you don't realize that you as a therapist aren't doing any of the things that your mother did. You're just saying the things that your mother said. You're not helping the victim. That's where victims are sent to get help, is to therapists, mental health, when they're called mentally ill. If your husband's assaulting you, but you're depressed because he beat your daughter to death and you can't prove it, and you're stuck in the same house as him because you can't afford to go anywhere else and you're afraid to leave him because he just tells people that you're crazy and mentally ill and has you locked up because you're depressed. Is that okay? No. It says here, people don't try to finish my sentences. How many people talk over me? I don't get my sentences finished. I get them told with a different narrative from somebody else, talking over the narrative, making sure they're the one that's heard. They're the ones that get to say something. The last one here is, it says people care about what I think. Well, not if they're constantly insisting that I do what they want and expend my resources that I don't have on what they want in exchange to get help that they promised me because it's the help I need. The help that Jared tried to provide. Now, although it wasn't perfect, we get a score of 8 out of 10. That's because he's a man. Having a female there and present, she's more likely to be heard, more likely to be taken seriously. It would have been nice if Jared was a female, or if I were a female in that aspect. Other than that, we did pretty good given the situation. All right, so we're going to play this from a transgender person, and we're going to tear this down into nothing, aren't we? As always, let's play this.
A friendly reminder to all the cis out there, just because it's called
All right, so cis out there, this is a derogatory term for somebody who's not transgender. It's only used derogatorily. People who try to type it in there and pretend like it's a nice word, it would be like if you were to take the N word and then you were saying a compliment towards black people, right? This is also racism. Complimental racism. You can do this to anyone. Oh, your people are so smart. I've heard that in grocery stores. Oh, you're Polynesian? Oh, your people are so smart. You're from Korea? Your people are so smart. You're from Taiwan? Oh my God, you people are so good with computers. Now imagine if you were saying one of those about black people. Right? Well, your people are great athletes. And you're writing about how great athletes that black people are. I'm not talking about African Americans. You think Aborigines from Australia, living in the United States, do you think they want to be called African Americans? That's pissing on their culture. Using the word cis in some of these things, it's about like using the N word when you're saying something about black folks. All those N words are so great at sports. They're better at sports than we are. Really, which ones? And why are you calling them the N word? Does that magically make it a good scientific term? Neurotypical is kind of downgrading too, isn't it? That's what us neurodivergent, we try to be inclusive. People who are autistic, we are very good at connecting emotionally with each of these groups and each of these people. We're also able to break it down into you're all divided and conquered already. You're already at each other's throats and you're not going to listen to us because we don't mean anything to any of your groups. The disabled are on their own. You'll say in general that it's wrong, but in reality, we're on our own and people are going to be mostly words. Now, the next part of this person is saying just because it's preferred, I'll show you what it is. It's a woke TikToker threatens cis people, question mark, question mark. Right? Now it starts off with a woke person being derogatory and then insisting preferred. Let's hear this. We're going to finish this out. There's a good point to this too. When I was in Boulder, Colorado, I was okay with the them, they, and the he, she. Whatever you wanted to be described as, sure, I'll try to accommodate you. And I pretend that I hate Canadians, right? When people want to come up to me with racism and I pretend I hate Canadians. Kind of that thing. Who hates Canadians? Nobody. Yes, I had Canadians that threatened to kill me over Natalie Bollinger being killed and what they saw on the internet. Gender, because I was broke, because I couldn't defend myself, because they thought it was okay. But does that mean that I hate all Canadians? Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. I just try to counter stupidity with stupidity. If you're not understanding the intelligent part of it that I was trying to explain to you, then maybe you will understand it if I throw it in your face exactly how you're doing to me. You hate Max. Really? Canadians think they're above us. You get that? It's a joke. They are above us geographically. That doesn't make them better than us any more than we would be considered better than Mexicans, but yet here we are. Now we've got somebody who's entitled here. This is obviously a male who wants to pretend to be one of the candy girls. What those are, you can look them up, or if you lived through the 90s, you probably do know who they are. It's obviously a very masculine voice, and we're going to get further into that, but it's also not that person. This is a male turned female trying to make all males out to be horrible, and we get to hear much out of females about how men are violent, men are violent, men are violent. This woman on the bottom, she considers herself a men's rights kid, and oftentimes she is, but just like with Chloe Roma, there's stuff I'm not going to agree with. And we're going to get into that. Now, this lady here talks about how gender assignments of violence as roles is wrong because oftentimes men are afraid to turn in crimes against them because they're treated the way that, well, we are. Even with Jared showing up, there's no guarantee that that officer's going to do anything. Matter of fact, that officer probably won't. But at least Jared showed up. We both lose a point. Out of 10 points, we only get 8 out of 10 because neither one of us are the right gender to be heard or taken seriously. When threats against us happen, we're not taken seriously if we turn them in because we have to be afraid to. We have to be afraid that it's going to be up to their discretion instead of up to the evidence. If you're locked up, you don't have access to the one, your public pretender is going to make zero effort to go get it. Now this part, just because it's called preferred, and we're going to finish that part real quick now.
Preferred name and preferred pronoun, that does not make it optional.
Actually, that is what it means. Preferred does mean optional. Let me tell you something. If a black man tells me that his preferred pronoun is the N-word, I'm not going to call him that. If he says you'll either call me that or I'm going to beat you up, that's not going to work out so well. That's not a threat. That's me saying that it's not going to work out so well. People get hurt and injured over a word. And that word, if I call a black person that, I'm a horrible racist, right? But if I don't call a black person that, if they choose it to be their preferred pronoun, I'm going to get hurt. And you say, oh, well, you don't have to dwell on all the little things. Always going to be mentally ill people like that, blah, blah, blah. You're right. Except you dwell on little things like that. Most women, not all women. Right? Instead of just saying women, we should specify individually which ones. I identified individually on here where both men showed their sexism, how their decisions and their rules were different for men than they were for women, how they interacted with a woman in crisis versus a man was completely different. And if a woman pretended that she was a victim, they would automatically take her side and refuse to look at evidence, refuse to listen to the man, refuse to look at the man's side. And of course, you spread that slander. And there's guys who are expected to do something for a woman's honor. They expect to do something violent, something hateful, something mean, something gender-based, something primarily assigned to men, and only when we're told that we're supposed to. I was at and mind you, these are always at bars or street dances that people have invited me to. Hey, Sean, you know what? You should really try coming down to the bar. You don't have to drink. You can just come and hang out. I don't know how many times I've seen a woman go to a bar with her husband. She's very small. Her husband is very large, and he's a teddy bear. And his wife gets drunk, and he's still a teddy bear, and he's apologizing. I'm sorry she gets that way sometimes. It's usually only when we're out drinking. And she finds another man, and she wants to slap him in the face a couple of times. And, the first couple ones, he laughs it off. And then, the third and fourth one, the other guy that she's smacking, her husband is asking her to stop, begging her to stop. Please, honey, could you please stop, please? I swear, bartender, I'm going to take her home. All right, we're just going to take her home. You don't have to call the police. Well, during that period of time, the guy that she's smacking, he stops laughing because she just hit him instead, and hit him hard. Just because he's poofy in his body doesn't mean that punching him in the face doesn't feel good. Taps her up. You know what that means, right? He gives her a bear hug. He's not trying to hurt her. He's not trying to break her. He's not trying to squeeze her. He's just trying to stop her from hitting him again. Right? And he says he'll let her go when she promises to stop hitting him. And the husband is like, honey, you need to calm down. Honey, you need to calm down. And she's screaming at him, F you, F you. If you were any kind of a man, you wouldn't let him beat on me. You wouldn't let him attack me. You wouldn't let him hurt me. Well, the cops don't get called. She gets away with it. Oh, well, she was just drunk, and magically that's okay. Well, what about if she does that every weekend? If she does that at home? What if she does that every night that you don't get to see? Or get violent for a woman's honor. Or then when a woman does something wrong, she always knows that she can just act like she's and men are expected to come to her rescue. And then they also get to go to women, even the ones that they don't like. And they get to go, oh, well, this is happening or that's happening. It doesn't have to be true. And then next thing you know, you've got a whole bunch of Karens coming after you. Once you've got it on the news and all that, every Karen gets to see that. And the ones that really have a lot of hatred are going to get on there and they're going to threaten and harass a poor innocent male. I do mean poor. And I do mean innocent. Now, assigning the gender assignments to this, and this lady here on the bottom, she does talk about how the gender assignments say that men are supposed to be more violent. She also speaks, as many of these men's advocates do, about how women are more likely to get violent, but men are more likely to do damage. More likely to. Well, they're also a lot less likely to report it because men have to be afraid that they'll be arrested. In Nebraska, they've got a law. There's what's called mutual combat. If you get into a fight with someone, it's assault by mutual combat, whether you're a man or a woman. But they call it domestic assault, and magically they can make it and assign it to just one side. Now, with most of the violent crimes by women going unreported, the majority of violence against children is perpetrated by the mother, not the father. The majority of those killed, that's right, the majority of those killed by a parent are killed by the mother, not the father. And now we're going to get to the point here. Okay, so I'm against threatening to kill people, or threatening to do people that will kill them. When Tyler Frericks decided that he was going to make a post saying that it was okay to punch Colin Kaepernick in the throat, actually saying that a soldier should punch Colin Kaepernick in the throat for not standing up to it is the equivalent of a Nazi flag flying over their heads at football games, and he is a professional football player. That is what it represents to many Americans, especially broke Americans. Many of those broke Americans just have pride in having their Second Amendment, their guns. When it comes to mandated reporters, you want to change words around, right? Like, of course, a reporter should be a reporter, right? You're mandated to do so. And all mandated reporters seem to think that it's optional. It's optional reporter. If they want to ignore it because the person they're trying to turn in is a friend or a coworker, or you don't want to deal with the drama or the bullshit, you just don't have to do your job as a mandated reporter. You can talk your way out of it by changing the words. Preferred does mean preferred. My name is Sean. My name is not them, they. My name is not he, it is not she. But if you're using it as a descriptive, I understand how it doesn't sound as clean, doesn't flow as smoothly in speech if you say Sean in every single one of those occasions. We also encounter people like in Boulder, Colorado. I was fine with calling people then, people who got very angry and irate with me because I didn't call them they when I should have, or they thought that I should have been able to read their mind and know that they were them they. No. Now each of these individual groups gets to get offended by words. Get offended by words, but also use many words derogatorily towards others. So we've got a lot of this violence that's going around, and we've got creators of that violence. And we've also got a lot of people that feel very entitled to violence. They feel it is owed to them for them to be allowed to hurt and harm others and to threaten bodily harm against others, including things that will kill people. When I said I was 100% against Tyler Frericks or a soldier punching Colin Kaepernick in the throat, I meant it. Do you know why? Because that could potentially kill them. And a soldier is taught how to kill you by punching you in the throat, how to crush your trachea. So literally what Tyler Frericks was doing was asking for someone to be killed because he didn't have to live it, because he didn't want to understand it, because he was insulted by someone standing up for their rights and for the rights of others. Because he is now getting paid money, he should not care about anybody who he grew up with that might still be stuck back there taking that abuse, might not be lucky enough to have genetics that make them 6'5" and allow them to put on that much muscle. But what did I do? I gave them a taste. I said, well, then somebody should punch that soldier in the throat. Oh, it's different. It's different when you say it back. It's different when you say it back. You think that a Nazi should punch a Jew in the throat for saying this stuff is wrong? Why would you want an American soldier to punch a black person in the throat for saying this is wrong? That's horrible. How many of you, the first thought that went through your head when I said, well, if someone says a Nazi should punch a Jew in the throat, how many of you thought to yourselves, well, then somebody should punch that Nazi in the throat? Somebody should have punched that Nazi in the throat to begin with. How many of you people have that as a thought going through your head when I said that? Quick to violence, your first reaction, your first response. Many people, like a lot of people in this town, the first response is that they would shoot somebody. They volunteer that information. Always quick to violence, or to violence as a response, or as violence as a response for others. A lot of people told me what I should have done is to kill Ted Bollinger. Well, I'm against that. A lot of people said what you should have done is just blow yourself up, blow your own head off, and all sorts of really mean stuff. And over time, that gets to hurting real bad. But as a guy, you're not allowed to say something. You ain't allowed to get sad. Let's play on this. This is obviously somebody who used to be a male and is now identifying differently.
You have trouble accepting that, then maybe instead you can accept my size 13 steel toe on your trachea. We can.
Starts off with insults. My name isn't cis. My name is Sean. I'm not a cisgender. I'm a Sean. I'm as individualistic as you are. I'm not men. The problem that we have is that men aren't heard when they try to do it the right way. They're blown off. The only response that you will pay attention to when a man is in crisis is if he screams at the top of his lungs, or starts threatening people. Now, obviously, if I'm not okay with a soldier punching a black person in the throat, I'm not okay with this person kicking anyone in the throat, especially over a word like that. You're going to be insulting, but then you're going to be angry over it's not preferred. Truly expected if someone is going to kill you over something that's preferred. Openly speaking of killing you, as if this is acceptable. Would it be openly acceptable to say things like that about a transgender person? No, that would get removed immediately. That would be considered a hate crime. It's not a hate crime from them. It's only a hate crime towards them. It only be wrong one way. This is called entitlement. This is what special rights do. This is what happens when you kill people who are fighting for equality, like Abraham Lincoln or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X. Malcolm X was born in the same state I was. That's right, Malcolm X was born in Nebraska, folks. He's one of us, born